In a world where the scales of justice often seem unbalanced, one woman's determination to stand up against systemic bias can illuminate the path toward reform. Justice in the Balance is a gripping narrative that follows the journey of Emma Reynolds, a federal prosecutor who unexpectedly finds herself at the center of a controversy that challenges the very foundation of the judicial system. When a routine court appearance spirals into a confrontation with a powerful judge, Emma becomes the voice for those who have long endured discrimination in silence. This story explores the complexities of justice, the courage to confront bias, and the hope that change can be achieved one courtroom at a time. The dawn had barely broken over the Atlanta skyline when Emma Reynolds' alarm buzzed insistently at 6:30 a.m. While her day was not scheduled to begin in court until 9 a.m. Years of experience as a federal prosecutor had instilled in her the critical value of being more than prepared. Her chic, yet compact apartment in the heart of Atlanta was a testament to her meticulous nature. Case files stacked neatly on her desk, her professional attire ironed and ready for the day ahead. This morning, however, was different. Emma was not heading to the federal courthouse, where she usually commanded respect as an assistant United States attorney. Instead, she found herself facing a personal matter that required her presence at the municipal court. A disputed parking ticket she firmly believed had been issued in error. Choosing a more casual outfit, Emma slipped into a tailored navy blazer over a crisp white blouse and black trousers. Standing before her bathroom mirror, she expertly pinned back her naturally curly hair, a recent decision that marked her embrace of authenticity after years of adhering to society's narrow beauty standards. At 35, her face reflected a fierce determination, a quality that had propelled her to graduate at the top of her class from Harvard Law School and land her prestigious position in the U.S. Attorney's office. Just a quick court appearance, she reassured herself, grabbing a banana and her travel mug filled with steaming coffee. Her sleek Mercedes, a reward for her recent success in prosecuting a major corruption case, awaited her in the parking garage. Though she often noticed the surprised glances from passers-by as she stepped out of her luxury vehicle, Emma took pride in her accomplishments and the path she had carved. As morning traffic crawled through downtown Atlanta, she tuned into NPR, absorbing the latest news while mentally reviewing her documentation for the parking ticket dispute. The ticket had been issued in a location where parking signs conflicted, a fact she had diligently documented with photographs. At 8:15 a.m., her car's Bluetooth system buzzed, announcing an incoming call. To her surprise, the caller ID revealed it was her boss, the U.S. attorney himself. Emma's heart rate quickened. Direct calls from him rarely signaled anything less than urgent. "Emma, I apologize for the early call." Her boss's voice crackled through the speakers. "We have a situation with the Thompson trafficking case. The defense just submitted a last-minute motion that could derail our prosecution. I need your eyes on this immediately." Emma gripped the steering wheel tighter, her mind racing. The Thompson case was one of the most significant human trafficking prosecutions in Georgia's history. "Of course, sir. What's the timeline?" "The judge has given us until noon to respond. I'm sending the documents to your email now. Can you review them and call me back with your analysis?" "Yes, sir," Emma replied professionally, though anxiety gnawed at her. She had planned to park by 8:30 a.m., allowing herself ample time to locate the right courtroom. Now, she would need to pull over and examine these urgent documents. Finding a spot in a small coffee shop's parking lot, Emma hastily extracted her laptop and connected to her phone's hotspot. As she delved into the defense's motion, the legal arguments became increasingly intricate, demanding her full attention. Minutes slipped away, and when she finally glanced at her watch, panic surged through her. 8:50 a.m. The municipal court was still 10 minutes away, and parking would undoubtedly take additional time. Quickly, she dialed her boss back, sharing her findings and promising a more comprehensive review after her court appearance. Back in traffic, Emma fought to remain calm. She had never been late to court before, a breach of protocol that contradicted everything she stood for. Yet, the Thompson case loomed larger than her own schedule. It had the potential to impact dozens of lives. Finally, she pulled into the municipal court parking lot at 9:10 a.m. and hurried toward the building, clutching her documentation. Just as she ascended the courthouse steps, her phone vibrated with a thank you message from her boss, acknowledging her swift analysis. A small smile crept onto her face. At least the delay had served a purpose. What Emma did not realize, as she rushed into the courthouse, was that her slightly tardy arrival would trigger a cascade of events that would expose deep-seated biases within the very system she had dedicated her life to serve. Judge Alan Harper's courtroom awaited her, a space notorious for its strict rules and unyielding demeanor. At 62, with salt and pepper hair and wire-rimmed glasses, he carried an air of authority cultivated over 3 decades on the bench. He sat elevated above everyone else, his black robe pressed and pristine, observing the stream of people filing into his courtroom for the 9 a.m. session. As Emma entered quietly, attempting to minimize her disruption, Judge Harper's attention snapped to her. "Step forward," he commanded, his voice sharp and unforgiving. The other case was momentarily forgotten, as all eyes turned to the newcomer, the young woman who dared to enter his courtroom late. "You must be Emma Reynolds, scheduled for 9 a.m., he stated, emphasizing the time with palpable disapproval. "Do you think your time is more valuable than the court's time is, Reynolds?" Before Emma could respond, Judge Harper continued, his voice rising. "In this court, we have rules." He shuffled through papers, barely glancing at her. The tension in the courtroom thickened. Other defendants shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Earlier, a white businessman had arrived 5 minutes late without consequence. Emma stood at the podium, her hands clasped in front of her, feeling the weight of judgment bearing down upon her. She could see the dismissive glint in Judge Harper's eyes. The condescending manner in which he addressed her felt all too familiar. "Your Honor, if I may explain," Emma began, her voice steady but interrupted. "I've heard every excuse in the book," he snapped. "Car trouble, traffic, personal emergencies. None of that matters here." The time was set for 9 a.m. Emma maintained her composure as he prepared to announce her punishment. She had faced prejudice throughout her career, but this was different. This was a blatant abuse of power unfolding before witnesses in a system she had sworn to uphold. The courtroom silence deepened as Judge Harper leaned forward, his face flushed with indignation. "I hereby fine you $500 for contempt." He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle. It was one of the highest fines he had given for tardiness that year, though he omitted this detail. Emma stood resolute, noting every detail of the interaction. The judge's failure to acknowledge her credentials or paperwork revealed his assumptions, written plainly across his face. As he prepared to continue, Emma's mind raced. This was more than personal. It was about exposing a systemic bias that could no longer be ignored. In the gallery, an elderly man named Samuel Green watched with concern. He had witnessed similar scenes play out countless times over the years, and now, as he caught Emma's eye, he offered a subtle nod of understanding. "This court will not tolerate such disregard for procedures," Judge Harper continued, his voice a booming reprimand. "Perhaps a fine will help you remember the importance of punctuality." Emma's posture remained upright and professional, but her heart raced. She had faced hardened criminals and aggressive defense attorneys. This was a different battle, one that represented a larger struggle against systemic injustice. As the judge prepared to deliver his punishment, Emma felt a surge of determination. The moment she opened her briefcase, the atmosphere in the courtroom shifted. She pulled out her credentials, the gold seal of the United States Department of Justice gleaming in the harsh light. "Your Honor," she began, her voice steady and authoritative, "I need to properly introduce myself for the record." The courtroom paused, all eyes on her. "I am Assistant United States Attorney Emma Reynolds, currently serving in the Northern District of Georgia." The effect was immediate. Judge Harper, who had been so imposing just moments before, appeared visibly shaken. For the first time that morning, he truly looked at Emma, not merely as a defendant, but as a professional equal. "I apologize for my tardiness," Emma continued, her tone firm yet respectful. "I was delayed due to an urgent federal case requiring my immediate attention, the Thompson human trafficking prosecution. I can provide written confirmation from the U.S. Attorney's Office, if necessary." The tension in the room morphed into awe. The young woman who had initially cowered in her seat now felt emboldened. The elderly man, Samuel, straightened up, pride swelling in his chest. Emma's assertiveness shifted the power dynamic. She addressed the judge directly. "Your Honor, what matters is the equal application of justice." Judge Harper attempted to regain control, but Emma was resolute. She had been documenting the discrepancies all along, each word, each tone, every instance of bias. "Let's proceed with the next case," Judge Harper stammered, clearly unsettled. "No, Your Honor," Emma interjected. "Before we continue, I must address the larger issue at hand." She turned to the gallery, her voice rising in strength. "I have observed patterns of discriminatory treatment in this courtroom, particularly regarding race and perceived status." The murmurs in the courtroom grew. Judge Harper's face reddened as the implications of her statements settled in. "I propose 3 immediate actions," she stated, her confidence unwavering. "First, I will pay the $500 fine not because it's just, but because it will serve as documented evidence of today's proceedings." The room fell silent, the weight of her words palpable. "Second, I request that Your Honor review the last 6 months of contempt charges and fines issued in this courtroom, focusing on demographic patterns. And third, I suggest mandatory bias training for all court personnel, including the bench." The judge's discomfort was evident, but Emma pressed on. "What's extreme is the ongoing pattern of racial bias in our courts. As a federal prosecutor, I've witnessed how these seemingly simple matters contribute to systemic barriers to justice." The atmosphere crackled with energy as Emma laid out her case, a powerful example of how one individual could challenge an institution. Judge Harper sat in silence, his authority eroding before the eyes of the courtroom. The days that followed were a whirlwind. News of Emma's confrontation spread like wildfire across Atlanta. Legal communities buzzed with conversations about bias, and Emma found herself receiving calls from attorneys who shared their own stories of discrimination in Judge Harper's courtroom. As her office became a gathering point for those seeking justice, Emma realized that her battle was not just for herself, but for countless others who had suffered in silence. In the ensuing weeks, an investigation into Judge Harper's conduct revealed alarming patterns. The Judicial Qualifications Commission launched a formal inquiry into his courtroom practices, with Emma's experience serving as the catalyst for change. The investigation uncovered systemic bias that had permeated the judicial system for years. As records were examined, it became clear that disparities in fines and treatment were widespread. Emma's courage had opened the door to a much larger conversation about justice and equality. In the months that followed, reforms began to take shape. Judge Harper, faced with overwhelming evidence of his biases, was given a choice: resign or face a public hearing. He chose to step down, but his resignation marked the beginning of a new chapter in Atlanta's judicial history. Emma Reynolds emerged as a champion for change, leading initiatives to address systemic bias in the courts. She taught classes on ethics and bias, sharing her story with law students and young attorneys, empowering them to stand up against injustice. In the end, Emma's fight was not just about one judge or one courtroom. It was a movement to ensure that justice would be blind to race, gender, and background. It was a call for equality that resonated far beyond Atlanta, a reminder that one voice, when raised in courage, can indeed change the world. As the sun set over Atlanta, casting a warm glow on the city, Emma Reynolds reflected on her journey. The fight against systemic bias was ongoing, but the changes initiated in the aftermath of her courtroom confrontation were palpable. The newly established Center for Judicial Education and Equality stood as a testament to the progress that had been made. The courtroom where she had once faced judgment was now a place of learning and awareness. Emma had become a beacon of hope, inspiring others to join the fight for justice. In her office, framed and displayed, was a $500 fine receipt, a symbol of the day she stood up and made a difference. Below it hung a plaque that read, "Justice is not just about the law. It's about how we treat each person who walks through these doors." With renewed determination, Emma knew that her story was just one of many, a part of a larger narrative that would continue to unfold. Together, they would forge a new path toward equality, ensuring that justice would indeed be served for all,